Hello and welcome to this edition of Commissioners Chat. I'm President Commissioner Mike McKay, and with me today is the Honorable Comptroller of the State of Maryland, Mr. Peter Franchot. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Good to see you, sir.
Great to be here.
All right. Peter, if I may, you were first elected to the position of Maryland State Comptroller in 2006. Can you give our viewers a brief overview of the constitutional responsibilities of your office, please?
Well, Mike, that's a great question. I will say, just for the record, that even my own mother didn't think I was going to win the race. And here I am, lucky enough to be your comptroller. And it's a great job. It has about 1,100 employees in the agency, and we have about $116 million budget annually. People like Senator George Edwards from this part of the state are on the budget committee that looks at my budget. So, and Senator Edwards is a great, hardworking member of the legislature, but last year, or the year that we're in actually, Mike, I gave back $2.3 million to the legislature and said, not only am I going to give that back to you, you're not even asking for it, but I'm going to deliver you a better tax season, because my office collects the taxes for the state of Maryland. So we process almost 3 million tax returns a year.
Wow.
And we just picked it up a notch. We said we're going to use more technology, better leadership, better clarity, more innovation, and I'm happy to report that we're having a very, very good tax season, and I think the legislature is going to take note of that. I call it the 2% club.
Okay.
We cut our budget by 2%, and we give you a better result.
Well,
but other than the question's an excellent one, because it's a big responsibility. In addition to collecting taxes, every 2 weeks I meet with the governor and the treasurer, and we vote on about $450 million in state contracts at every meeting, which, as I said, occurs 2 weeks, every 2 weeks of the year. So it's that Board of Public Works is a big responsibility, and I'm probably the only elected official that sees all the revenues coming in every day, and then every 2 weeks I get to vote on these significant contracts. So it's an important fiscal job, and I'm obviously very humble and honored to have the position.
On the Board of Public Works, who's on that board?
That is a unique panel in the country. Only Maryland has a Board of Public Works, which, like ours, votes on all the big contracts. And what is unique about Maryland is that the governor doesn't appoint there are 3 members, the governor and 2 other members. He doesn't appoint those 2 members.
Okay.
Every other state, it's the governor plus his appointed Secretary of Finance or something like that. But it's not to say they don't have any review, but everybody knows what the answer is going to be at the end of the day.
Right.
And the fact that I'm independently elected, and the governor's independently elected, and the treasurer is elected by the legislature, gives that Board of Public Works a really special role, which is my role on it is to stick up for the taxpayer and try to make sure that everything we approve meets that common sense test of what most Marylanders would think is reasonable.
Well, and on behalf of Allegany County and Garrett County, you all had approved some measures here recently for us, and we appreciate that, sir. We really, really do.
Well, let me just say that Western Maryland, for me, is very special because it's quite a long distance from Annapolis, and it seems the farther away you are from Annapolis, the less they listen to you often, which is why I'm such a big admirer of Senator Edwards, for example, and others who represent this area, because they fight against that. But I'm happy to lend my voice and help out Western Maryland whenever it has an issue. You and I have talked about coal,
which
is an important natural resource and very little understood sector of our economy in the rest of the state. And so I've worked with you and others to have a coal summit and things like that.
Well, speaking of the coal summit, what do you believe on some of the outcomes from that coal summit that you held here in Western Maryland recently?
Well, the main result from that summit was bringing people together and reminding everyone that whether you're identified with coal or with some other issue in Western Maryland, coal is a pivotal part of the economy. And just like poultry on the Eastern Shore, it shouldn't be turned into a political football every year in Annapolis where the environmentalists take pot shots at it and other people try to take away tax policies that help the coal industry stay competitive. So I think it had a very healthy impact in bringing folks together and reminding everyone about the employment contribution that coal makes and also the natural resource energy component. And then there are policies in Annapolis that people have to obviously debate back and forth, but I remind folks that Port of Baltimore would not be half as healthy from a financial standpoint if it wasn't for coal being brought down by CSX and others down to the Port of Baltimore and shipped overseas.
Well, on behalf of Commissioner Brody, who is I think it's a fourth or fifth generation coal miner, he really appreciates, and we really appreciate your ability to stand up for the coal industry and stand up for those things that are truly economic drivers here in.
I got a great story to tell you because people write me, it's very poignant actually, they write me personal notes often when they send in their tax returns.
This is one we can share, right?
This is one we can share.
Okay.
Yep, this is okay, and they get delivered over to my desk. And this was from a gentleman named Herb, and he was right here in Western Maryland, and he was writing a letter saying, I'm having trouble paying my taxes, but here's the check, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, I work hard all year long so I can take my family for a week in August and go down to Ocean City from Western Maryland. And he ended up saying, and I couldn't do that if I didn't have a job in the coal industry. Which he didn't even go into what his job was, but he said, I have a job in the coal industry. That allows me to have this luxury for us, but of 1 week a year, putting everybody in the car and going down to Ocean City.
Wow, it's definitely that.
Those are real people.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's a good example that the Western Maryland helping out Eastern Shore. We are truly all one Marylanders, and we're all important.
Yeah, but we are. Sometimes the rhetoric is stronger than the actions, and that's what bugs me. That we have a state where that one Maryland is ballyhooed a lot, but it's sometimes unevenly applied, I guess is the way I would say it. So I would encourage everyone in Western Maryland to keep their elbows up and just realize that it's a competitive environment out there. And just because someone says, it's all one Maryland, well, at the end of the day, just make sure you've got your meal protected because otherwise someone's going to steal your plate.
Yeah. To get back to the responsibilities as the comptroller, is there one aspect that you enjoy over the other? What's the single most thing as being comptroller that you like?
The main thing that I like is being able to work with 1,100 state employees and produce a product that I believe the public, if they knew all the details, would really appreciate. And I put a lot of emphasis on clarity and management, minding the store, rolling my sleeves up and just working with my fellow employees. It's a big agency. As I said, it's got over a $100 million budget. And just minding the store. that's what I really enjoy doing, and then being able to show the taxpayers and the legislators when they have time to really look at it, that it's not really a battle between cutting budgets or raising taxes. The issue is who's willing to manage what we have in a way that gets a better result and uses less money. That's my. You asked what was I enjoy doing, and it's I mentioned the 2% club where we cut our budget 2% and we improve the service.
Wonderful. The Maryland's AAA bond rating has recently been upheld by the bond raters on Wall Street. Allegany County was recently upgraded by Moody's to a AA3 and by Standard & Poor's to A+. Because of Washington's inability to balance its own fiscal house, what implications might another downgrade to the federal government bond rating have on us here in Maryland?
Frankly, probably not much. Here's the deal on the economy. The United States has a lot of fiscal problems. We're spending too much, we're borrowing too much, we're taxing too much, particularly in the state of Maryland. That goes without saying. However, the United States of America is absolutely unchallenged right now as far as economic might around the world. Almost every country that has cash reserves holds those cash reserves in dollars, not the Chinese renminbi or whatever they call it, or the German Deutschmark or the Japanese yen. They hold it in dollars because the U.S. is the economic giant and the economic power. So these bond ratings that go down at the federal level, I know it was, I think it was highly unfortunate that they went down, but the overall strength of the U.S. economy is stunning when you compare it to other countries. Does that mean we should not have fiscal reform? No, we absolutely need it. We need less debt, less spending, less taxation. We need to have the private sector properly incentivized, and we need them to, in a dynamic way, move forward and create jobs and wealth and prosperity. But so there's a lot of fiscal stuff to work through, but I wouldn't get too skittish about this national AAA bond rating because we print our own currency. We have an enormous workforce, and we just have an economic strength that a lot of people don't realize. But congrats to Allegany for having
thank you,
improved its bond rating, and more importantly, just hats off to Allegany for this financial literacy emphasis that you have in your school system and also in, obviously, your public budgets.
Yeah,
you're not the problem in Maryland. There are other problems in a town that begins with A over there on the Chesapeake Bay.
No, you talk about the financial literacy programs. Our Board of Education has done a wonderful job. They've been a true leader in the state for that, and they definitely need to be commended for that.
Well, let me just say that there's no more important issue, because you'll notice that, people may not realize this. The number one reason why people can't get a job these days is not because they've had problems with the judicial system. It's because of, quote, financial considerations. People see, that they've had bad debt. And it actually disqualifies a lot of people from applying for jobs with the federal government. So young people need to realize that you have to be serious about these fiscal education so that you don't put yourself in a position where you can't get a job.
Wow, and that's what it's about. The 2013 Maryland General Assembly legislative session is now history. As you know, there were several national issues in the spotlight, death penalty and the right to bear arms. You, however, as the Chief Financial Officer and the Fiscal Watchdog for the taxpayers of Maryland, I'd like you to focus on new laws with financial implications that, from the perspective of your office, are important. And I tend to believe that if we can get our fiscal house in order, a lot of these social problems take care of themselves.
Couldn't agree with you more.
It's going to need your leadership of being our watchdog and leading by example, of being part of the 2% club. I think everybody should adopt that.
Why don't we just form a common sense caucus? We could have a joint kickoff announcement right here, but I couldn't agree with you more. On fiscal issues, there's a large consensus possible once you get the politics out. The problem, as you know, and everybody in elected office knows, everyone these days is constantly campaigning. So there's no there when you talk about governing and talk about consensus and compromise on fiscal issues. Everything's been so politicized that you can't be a Democrat if you're not in favor of tax increases. You can't be a Republican if you're not in favor of tearing something apart. And it's all about the next election. So I'm going to leave, I had my real complaints with the legislature, and I strongly oppose the gas tax, the imposition of the sales tax on the gas tax. My agency is going to implement that. It's an incredibly complicated burden that has been created with this new system of gas tax. But we're not the victims, even though we're going to have to implement it. It's the people that are going to have to pay it.
Certainly.
And out here in Western Maryland, people pay close to 15% of their after-tax income on gasoline. Think of that for a minute. I pay about, let's assume I'm just a private citizen. Someone with my income would pay about 2% of my after-tax income. Out here in Western Maryland, that gas tax is going to have increase. Come July, is going to have a negative effect. And to the extent it's allowed to be fully implemented before the economic recovery finishes, it's going to be damaging to Western Maryland and other rural areas or areas where people depend on that. But I think overall the problem with Maryland right now is that we've gone in and put tremendous energy into all these social advancements. People can agree or disagree with them, but we've forgotten the problem, which is how is the private sector creating jobs, and what can the state and the local governments do to get out of the way. I'm not talking about making the decisions. I'm talking getting out of the way so that the private sector can have this dynamic genius, which it has, for growth and job development. And that's what's missing in Annapolis. It's all about the public budget. It's all about the structural deficit. Hey, where are the jobs?
Right.
And where are the why are there so many for lease signs on main streets around the state when I travel? Why are we having a jobless recovery? Why aren't we doing better if the state budget is doing okay? Well, the state budget's doing fine because we've raised taxes, but small businesses are not doing well, and individuals, I'm sad to report, are increasingly leaving the state of Maryland because of what they view as a bad environment for retirement and for having small businesses. So we need to change that.
All right. Well, I hope that if from this or any other conversations that both you and I move forward and have with others, that both Republicans and Democrats can roll up their sleeves, put their differences aside, and try to fix the job issue. Because at the end of the day, everybody just wants a job.
I often say, I don't care whose idea it is. Does the idea work? If it works, let's link arms and go forward with it.
Amen.
So, Mike, thank you for having me on this program, and God bless Western Maryland and Allegany County, and boy, hats off to this community. I know how tough it is because I see the economic data. I see the sales tax revenue. I understand that people are having a tough time and that the recovery they read about up on Wall Street is not something they're experiencing. So please make sure everybody understands that we have an open door policy. Anybody has a tax problem, anyone has a constituent problem with my agency, the Comptroller's office, they should call you.
Okay.
You call our folks, and we will have that problem fixed that day.
Wow. Well, that's going back to minding the shop, and we appreciate you doing that.
Yes.
You know, I'd be remiss. This is the first time that these three commissioners have ever been elected to political office.
Yeah.
And you have been in political office for many, many years. Is there any advice that you would give these three commissioners, taking in consideration your vast experience holding public office?
I know this is hard, but a couple of things. Number one, customer service. It's the business we're in. People are frustrated. They don't like what politicians do. Just got to put up with it and serve the people, number one. And, you know, you do that and, you know, you're gonna do pretty well. I can't believe I've been in politics that long. It doesn't feel like it. But, you know, my advice is to politicians is stop campaigning, start governing. And that's hard for a lot of folks. I'm on both sides of the aisle.
Certainly.
And it's where a lot of this animosity comes from, because they're constantly trying to get an edge on somebody so that the next election they can do better. And that's not the American tradition. The American tradition has always been, sure, we'll fight it out in elections, but then lay the swords down, do what's right for the country.
Wonderful. Well, Mr. Comptroller, I really appreciate you taking the time to meet with us today.
Yeah.
This has been a blessing, and thank you very much for all you do for the taxpayers. And
Well, I appreciate
wow,
that.
I think we all should, regardless of what department we're in and whatever budget we're in, we all should pledge to be part of the 2% Club.
Thank you.
And that's an awesome.
Good.
Well, this concludes this edition of Commissioners Chat. We thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you have a nice evening and a good day. Thank you.